All right, welcome everybody to the How to Prepare for Your Best Interview webinar. We are so excited to have Suzanne Lawrence from Advisor Business Solutions here to present to us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone of a few more events we have coming up to prepare you for this application session that we're in. This Thursday, we will be having a live session with Brittany Castro, and we're going to discuss how to become a CFP Pro. It's going to be an open discussion, so a great time to tune in and listen to two professionals that are already in the industry. On November 1st, we will be holding another information session for any interns interested in and applying to our program. Registration for these events can be done on our website at blxinternship.org, and that will be put in the chat later on in the webinar. Applications are currently open until December 31st, so you can visit our website and submit your application at any time. So with that, we will turn the time over to Suzanne Lawrence. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Lawrence. I am CEO of Advisor Business Solutions. We have been the founding partner with the BLX internship program for the past 3 years, going into our 4th cohort. And our role is actually interviewing all of the interns who apply to the BLX program. And we review all the applications. We look at all of the information that is shared in the portal, transcripts. We verify everything. And then we actually interview all of the applicants on Zoom. And we want to make sure that we can help to assess your readiness. I wanted to just sort of give a quick snapshot of the process, just so you're aware. So we do interview everyone. We also will help to identify if there's additional job readiness coaching that you might be able to need. And we then assess everyone, and we actually match up the applicants with the BLX firms who are participating for the summer of next year to be matched up for who they would like to hire. So we've really seen the full circle, and I wanted to share with everyone just some realistic, helpful tips and hints on some of the things that you should be thinking about when you're looking to either apply to the program or when you're searching for a job for your next position. We definitely have a range of skill sets and readiness when people do come in to be interviewed. So the stronger applicants who are more prepared, organized, they are very clear on what it is they want to say in their interviews, as well as having people who maybe have not interviewed in a long time. They were less prepared, and so their interview doesn't come across as professionally. But this is the opportunity for us to be able to help and give feedback so adjustments can be made going forward. So I'm going to give you some things to think about so that you can find yourself in a better position to be selected by the hiring manager as a good candidate for the program. With that, I'm going to start with the program for the presentation. If you do have any questions, certainly feel free to put them in chat throughout the program. We don't need you to wait until the end of the presentation to ask questions. I encourage you to ask questions as we go along with anything that you would like to ask. I can assure you, if you have questions, other people in the group have the same question as well. So let us use this time wisely together. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the reality that job interviews are nerve-wracking. It's really, really common to have butterflies or nervousness when you know you're going to have an interview. And I want you to think about what are some of the things that might be helpful for you to overcome your nerves. So we have a poll that we're going to start off with. There's 4 options. What of these options will help you with calming your nerves? You have option 1, prepare yourself, eat breakfast, focus on your breathing and pause before you speak. And number 4 is, or D, remember you're having a discussion. Now you can choose any of these options. It doesn't have to be just one. You can choose all of the ones that you feel are going to be helpful for you to be feeling less nervous. I'm going to give everybody a minute to go ahead and select which options A, B, C, D that you feel would be helpful. Let's just take a quick minute and then we will share the results that the group has selected. And there's no wrong answer, by the way. Just what do you think is the correct one or the best ones to help you? And Leisha, if you could give an indication of when you think that you have the most results.
All right, looks like we've got about everybody putting in their answers. I'm going to give it one more minute. Just one other person. There we go. All right, so I'm going to display these results for you.
Okay.
You see that?
Yes, very good. Prepare yourself 100%. That's perfect. I'd like to see that answer. Eating breakfast, certainly not as critical. Focus on your breathing and pause. That actually is also another key strong thing for you to prepare for. And remember, you're having a discussion. That is the case as well, but I do feel like the group has definitely responded well with preparing yourself and focusing on your breathing. Those are for sure the most 2 key areas that I want you to pay attention to, because that will help you with your nervousness. Thank you so much. So let's talk a couple of minutes about first impressions. You get one chance to make a positive first impression when you're on an interview. So I really want you to be mindful of, first of all, do what you can to help address your nervousness. You don't want it to get in the way of how you're feeling comfortable in this really important interview conversation. I also want to point out it's incredibly important for you to prepare how you're going to introduce yourself. When I think of all of the interviews that we've had, almost every single one that goes incredibly well starts off with someone who knows exactly how they want to introduce themselves. So, for example, if you want to talk a little bit about where you're from, your background, if you have any family ties, anything that will be helpful for the hiring manager to just have a little snapshot of who you are and why you've chosen the fields that you're interested in, finance, financial planning, why it interests you. Just be very, very thoughtful about what it is that you're saying. On the opposite end, what we found is several of the interviews that we've held where people introduce themselves with a little more, I'll call it clinical or kind of a sterile approach. They say their name, they say they're at school, they're studying X. It's not really sharing that much about who they are as an individual. The hiring manager already has your application and your resume, so it already is information that they have already. So you want to really let this be a very passionate, heartfelt part of your information that you're sharing with the hiring manager. So practice how will you introduce yourself? It will be a huge confident booster for the rest of your interview. Certainly find out about other possible questions that might appear, which could be tied to, the job itself that you're responding to, the application that you filled out. It'll help you to think about, well, if they ask me a question pertaining to one area of the application, then how would you answer it? And make sure you're explaining and everything very clearly, and any information that you put on your application, be able to also answer any questions or to be able to explain any documents that you included in your submission. So along with first impressions, certainly comes a few of these other key areas. Now, I'm going to actually talk about both in person and on Zoom, because there's two really sort of sets of information we want to make sure we're very clear on. The first is in your appearance. Are you professionally dressed? Are you well-groomed? I would just like you to know, in the last couple of days, our interviewing team has interviewed about 8 interns who applied for participating in the program. Out of 8, 5 of them were professionally dressed and 3 had school t-shirts, sweatshirts, any kind of just very casual wear that they wore for the interview. And the interviewers did let them know that they had good talking points and things to say, but their dress was being documented, that they did not attend the interview with professional appearance. And they even had people have comments saying, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that. I should have worn a shirt and a tie. And that was hopefully sort of the lesson that they will have as a takeaway to be better prepared for the next interview and to not take it for granted. Is the body language very good? Sitting upright, straight? Are you looking attentive? Are you having good eye contact with anyone who is interviewing you? And also being very mindful about, are you talking fast or slow? Making sure you're using very professional language, as well as sounding very more articulate as best as you can. Now with Zoom, because we are always thinking about not just how you're appearing yourself, but what about your background? If you are in a room, a bedroom, is it neat behind you? Are there any distractions? I literally had an interview with someone last year who was in a bedroom. The bed behind the applicant was unmade. There were clothes on the floor and on a chair, and the door to the bedroom was open and people were walking back and forth. So there were all of these distractions that were happening while the interview was taking place. I did let the applicant know, please make sure your background is either a virtual background going forward, or you have a much more tidy room and organized. It's fine if it's a bedroom, but just be organized. The lighting, you want to make sure your tech is set up well before a Zoom interview. Make sure your lighting is good. Make sure your camera is positioned well. Make sure that you test it at least 1 hour before your interview, if not earlier in the day, before it's time for you to actually turn on your Zoom camera for the interview. Also, log in at least 3 to 5 minutes early. Even if you're sitting in the waiting room, waiting for the interview to start, it will look much more positive to the interviewer that you are early. And feel free to ask any questions about Zoom interviews, but these are things that I don't want you to overlook, because it could be the wrong first impression. So what does the company want? I need you to be sure that you're going to study the job post that you're applying for and learn what kind of candidate the firm needs for the position. If you are reading the job post and it's something of interest to you, or if you remember your questions that you put in the application, if you're submitting for BLX, think about what are some of the points you want to make that were mentioned in the job post or asked on your application that you can bring up in an interview. And that will be something to help you organize your talking points ahead of time. I see there's a question in Q&A. Oh, Lisa, are you getting the Q&A?
I am. So Vanessa asks, what do you think about Zoom filters or blurring?
I think that they can be okay. I think that it's really a matter of, does it look distracting, or is it subtle enough that you're not trying to figure out what's being blurred? So be very selective if that is what you're using, so that it's still not a distraction behind you. If it is, then I would go with just a different background altogether, even if it's just something that's soothing or pleasing to the eye, that again will still come across positive, but it's not taking away from the hiring manager paying attention to you more than what's going on behind you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so what are the hiring manager's expectations? I want you to think about, this is what's going on in their mind as they are selecting you to interview. How, first of all, are you going to explain why you're interested in the role? Again, it's another important thing for you to think about, because they want someone who's honestly interested or passionate about coming into the firm. It will show much more clearly if you can speak from the heart. What interests you about the opportunity or the position specifically? And can you explain why you would be the best person for them to select? In other words, how are you going to set yourself apart from the other applicants? And remember, it is competitive. So you want to be able to show and demonstrate that you are going to be someone that is going to work well within their environment. If you have any kind of work experience, and if not work, volunteer or internship experience that has certain things that align with what the company is looking for, be prepared to actually give specific examples that you can pull from. And part of this is just kind of going through each position or each volunteer work that you've done and think about what are all of the things that you've done. That then needs to be organized in sort of a very brief list, maybe a bullet point list of, here's one or two things that I can say when I was doing an internship for another firm or another program, but that experience would be certainly something that you should mention to the hiring manager. So what are the hiring manager's expectations? The first thing I will tell you is, when we have feedback from the firms after they've interviewed applicants, one of the things that comes across immediately is if they're excited about how much research that the candidate did before they had the interview. They light up like a Christmas tree. I mean, it's very, very clear that they're excited because the applicant was proactive. They were not skipping over or generalizing some of the information. They were very much specific to say, here's what your company's value proposition is. Here's the kind of culture that you have. And this is a lot of the times just coming from the website or coming from social posts. So it's really important for you to connect directly with the hiring manager because you looked up the information ahead of time. Having that personality, that positive attitude is always going to be a winner. And if you have on your application or on your resume any kind of, well, it's primarily more on your resume, but if there's any kind of gaps that you have shown that maybe you haven't worked in the last couple of years, maybe the last time you had a job was in 2021. Well, what have you been doing over the last 2 years? And it's totally acceptable and normal if things changed for you where you decided not to work any longer. If you're in school, maybe you needed to load up on more coursework and you just didn't have as much time to work, or if maybe something changed in your family, you were not able to work because you had to spend time taking care of family members. Life happens, it's all very normal, but just be prepared to be able to explain, here's what happened in the last couple of years, or here's what happened during a year where there was a break in your resume or job history. Pacing yourself is important. You want to make sure you're not rushing through your answers. Keep your pace very conversational. Don't rush through your answers. Again, this might be the nervousness that sometimes helps you to just say, I need to just, speak fast, but the reality is it's not coming across as well. So you want to make sure that you want to have a good pace with your explanations, with any answers, any kind of back and forth conversation points that you're making. Also, remember that you will have limited time for your interview. Most interviews are scheduled for 30 minutes. Some are 45 and many are an hour. It just depends on the firm. The hiring manager has very specific questions they would like to ask you. So you want to avoid losing too much time discussing things that are less relevant to the conversation. You don't want to have too much small talk. It's totally normal and very, very common to start off having many just sort of quick small talk chatter, if you will, for a few minutes. But once that's over, let's just be mindful of using your time wisely. Don't go into too much detail about other types of skills or jobs or work that's just not relevant for the position that you're applying for. So we get this question quite often. What if you don't have any experience for the position you're applying for? And for BLX, many times interns are applying for the first time to get their foot in the door in the financial planning industry to be able to have a job. So what we always want you to think about are what are some of the alternative ways that you can still demonstrate skills or interest in the position. Using your transferable skills is always number one. And that's because it's very common for you to have experience such as maybe working with customers. Maybe you've done work in retail, or maybe you've worked in food services, or maybe you've worked in community environments and different programs, or community center work. Totally normal for you to think about, here's things that you would do when you worked with customers. Maybe you can talk about how you could help with problem solving. Maybe there was an experience where you had a customer who was upset about something and you explained, here's what the information is that was maybe incorrect that they were understanding. Here's the correct information. the customer felt much better after that. That's just an example of how you communicated with customers. It doesn't have to be a very big, long explanation. It's just helping them to see that you can have some problem-solving skills or ways to communicate with customers, and that will be very helpful. If you're passionate about what it is that you'd like to learn, different types of ways of using new software, looking at different ways of learning different skills with tech, with working with clients, with working with planning. All of these are certainly very, very helpful if the hiring manager here's what interests me about your company, and these are things that you can adapt to quickly. And again, as a reminder, internships, volunteer experience that help align your background with the company's culture or what they're looking for. So, what job skills are hiring managers looking for? And I'm going to go ahead and have you move to the next slide on this. First of all, pay attention to how you're communicating with what it is that you're describing that your skill sets are. Are you able to speak confidently regarding yourself? Can you explain your accomplishments? What do I mean by that? If you can think of, again, in preparation for your interview, what might be one or two examples of accomplishments that you can share with the hiring manager that helps the hiring manager to see that you have maybe identified a way to help make things better with a volunteer situation or some type of maybe team environment that you've worked with, or even with other students on projects. What kinds of accomplishments can you say that you can help them to understand better? They love hearing, here's what I did when I worked with this group, or here's what I was able to understand, and then bring some suggestions, some ideas with this past experience that you've had. Are you able to articulate your responses in a professional manner? And I bring this point up because we are very accustomed to speaking casually with other friends and family, saying phrases like, and stuff like that, or and stuff. Well, you don't want to bring that to your interview. You really want to, what I call, hit the edit button and practice saying your information without those very common casual phrases. If you are asked a question, try to avoid just giving a straight yes or no as your answer. Maybe think about how you can explain what they're asking you in a very brief sentence or two that allows them to be able to understand what your point is.
All right, Suzanne, we have one more question that came in. Atia asks, going back to gaps in job history, how is it viewed by employers if you have taken time off due to illness?
Again, it's life happening. And if there was an illness that you experience, certainly the last few years have been very unusual with, having different kinds of symptoms or illnesses that, respiratory, having any kind of, extensive flus, or just having exposure to illnesses that you were not maybe vulnerable to, but it happened. So I would say just be very honest and direct when it came to, there was a time period that you you had health issues. You don't even have to say what it was specifically, but you had severe health issues. You really needed to take care of yourself. You had a lot of medical attention, and you needed time to recover. And so just being very transparent that that is what happened. And when you were able to get back on your feet again, get back to work again, then you were able to do so. And you knew that your body was then ready to be able to withstand a steady work schedule again. Very normal, and be very honest. So you're welcome. Okay, back to a couple of more points about just your communication skills. Be very mindful of both your nonverbal communication. Make sure, again, that you are smiling with your within your conversation. You're not slouching over, you're sitting upright. You have good eye contact with everyone who you are speaking with. And that will just feel very much more engaging and like you have a very good connection with the hiring manager or managers. And make sure you're being very mindful, again, about the time, how much time is being taken when you're asking, when you're giving question answer session. Don't give too long of a long answer, excessively long, I would say, in the event that it could be something that you could answer maybe in 2 to 3 minutes. Make it 2 to 3 minutes, not 5 minutes, because you don't want to lose too much time on 1 or 2 questions that you're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes, unless it's back and forth with you being asked questions and the hiring manager is engaged in part of the conversation that is part of your answer. So let's talk a couple of minutes about writing and research. And the reason why I bring this up is because if you are looking at what are some of the things that you've done that you're a good writer or you've done some heavy research with, it could be tied to school, it could be tied to other projects that you've done at other jobs or other types of work that you've done with even volunteer work or internships. Actually look at, do you have samples of things that you've written, things that you've submitted that were done very well and graded very well, research reports? Have you done team projects? Have you written anything, any kind of blogs or social content that is relevant to the job or the industry that you feel is going to be complementary? We've actually had posts on from Facebook or Instagram that we've had submitted that were examples of just financial literacy. It wasn't financial advice. It was just more about, saving money and watching out for how much you're spending, reducing debt. There's different ways of just sharing this information because you're passionate about it. Those would be good samples for you to actually include and submit with your application and with your resumes. If you have done any team projects, the other thing that I want you to think about is what kind of descriptions can you use when you talk about you've done team projects before. So, for example, let's say you had a team project that you had 4 people in the team. Well, what were some of the assigned areas for each of the team members? Did one person do the research, one person did the writing, one person did the PowerPoint, and one person did the presentation? Where did you fit in with the team? What was your role? What did you do as part of that role? How did everything come together? That explains collaboration, working with other people. This is what the hiring managers will also think about, how you would fit in with their team environment, how you might fit in with their staff. So these are definitely things that you want to consider to be a part of mentioning in your interview and including them on your resume. Technology proficiency is a very big deal now. I like to always remind anyone who is putting a resume together and applying and preparing themselves for an interview, think about how technology has literally just become part of how business is done now. Whether you're in different industries, they all have different tech that's being used for financial planning. Certainly, customer relationship management, also called CRM, is incredibly popular and done on almost every firm that uses that has clients. So you can mention that you have experience with a CRM, such as Salesforce, such as maybe Monday.com, even for people who have used Outlook. Outlook is also a CRM. The idea behind it is you understand that CRM has your customer name, address, contact information. It may have notes attached to it. It may have files and documents. It may be shared with other people so everyone can see what the information is. And that is really what is very commonly used to track what client information is captured for financial planning firms. So CRM, very important. Google Docs is more and more widely used now. Microsoft Office Suite, I will just say this. I have come across numerous candidates who have Microsoft Office Suite on their resume, but when I ask, well, what exactly have you used? Then some answers are less clear than others. If you use Word, what do you use it for? If you have Excel experience, what have you done with Excel? If you've used PowerPoint, if you used Outlook, what exactly are the programs in Microsoft Office Suite that you have used? Have you used Teams as far as the chat goes? Make sure you are including and expressing this is what I use and this is what I used it for, which will give more of a clearer answer for hiring managers. If you have any software you use in college courses, fine. If you've done any websites just as hobbies or creating podcasts, social media, anything tied to tech, that is absolutely positive. And then even when it comes to video chats, have you used Zoom? Probably. Have you used Teams? Have you used Google Meets? Have you used WebEx? Any of these programs are widely used everywhere now. So you want to include your tech proficiency in your information and in your discussions for your interviews. We're going to talk a couple of minutes about some of the common interview questions, but also simultaneously, I want you to think about this is what the hiring manager is really looking to figure out. How likely are you going to succeed with the job responsibilities that you are assigned? So the questions are really helping them to think, how well will you fit in doing the tasks that will be assigned to the role that you would be that you're applying for? Also, how well will you fit in with the other employees when it comes to asking questions or needing clarifications? Do you take notes when you are sitting down, having information that you're being taught, that you're learning? How do you capture your notes? How do you refer back to your notes? What's your system when it comes to learning new information and then being able to explain to a hiring manager, this is how I keep track of new information that I'm learning, X, Y, and Z. That will be helpful for them to see that you're organized, that you have a way to keep track of new information, that you're comfortable with being able to ask questions. You'll document what the information is, what the answers are, and then you'll be able to refer back to it. Some of the most common interview questions. Look at number one. We're back to tell me about yourself. First impression, tell me about yourself. That is going to be every single interview that you have. So make sure you spend time thinking about how will you answer that question? How will you comfortably describe yourself? Also, why are you interested in this position? What makes you unique? Now, what makes you unique is one of those questions that help hiring managers to think about what might be memorable about what you say. What are your career goals? Very normal. What is it that you are thinking that you're interested in and why? That's going to be something that's commonly asked. Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? What are your problems? Resolution skills. Tell me about a challenge that you've had. These are all very, very normal questions for you to prepare. How would you answer this in a way that you can explain it thoroughly and have the hiring manager even want to ask you more questions based on how you answer it. Answer truthfully. If you're applying for a job, you've got to be honest about yourself and your background. Look on your application, look on your resume, make sure everything is aligned properly. Let the interviewer know both your strong points as well as your weak points. Now, if it comes to the question of what are your strengths, I would say pick maybe 2 things that you want to talk about. Again, we're keeping our answers within 2 minutes, max 3. So just be very clear on what are the strengths that you want to point out. And on the flip side, we get this all the time, people saying, I never know how to answer. What are my weaknesses? What should I say? How do I come to an answer that doesn't shine a poor light on myself? I would say, pick one thing that you can say honestly, this is one thing that I do have a weakness in, but here's how I'm addressing the weakness. And at least you're giving a sense of you recognize that this is an area that you have a challenge with. So now you're addressing with how to do better at it. I also want you to always remember to be yourself. This is really so important because this is how you're going to shine in an interview. This is going to help the hiring manager to remember you. What is it about your personality? What is it about your mannerism? How they would see you fitting in with the culture and the team environment that they have. So be yourself. It's going to be very, very passionate when you're honest about yourself. I also want you to make sure that you keep in contact with the person who is interviewing you. Make sure you have their contact information. Most likely you will, because they're probably going to send you an email and they're going to send you a Zoom link or they're going to send you instructions for an interview. But what you want to do is, first of all, if the interview goes well, if you feel really good about what you just finished with the session, send a thank you email to the hiring manager, either later that same day or the next day. It lets them know you're appreciative and that you did enjoy meeting with them and you look forward to hearing from them again in the future. That's all you really need to say. If you are interviewing with a large firm, they're probably interviewing a lot of applicants. So it's going to be a much higher volume of people that they're interviewing, and they're going to probably need a longer time period to get back to you. But usually they'll let you know before the interview finishes, here's what the next steps will be. Here's when we'll follow up with you. If your application period and then interview happens and about a week or 2 goes by and you haven't heard anything, you certainly can send an email just following up, reaching back out to them. I met with you a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I just wanted to see if you have any further updates after my interview. That's all you need to say, and they'll respond when they can, but at least they know now you're following up, regardless of what the determination will be. You don't have to send more than one follow-up email, and you certainly may not hear back as quickly as you'd like to, but that is just a way for you to reach out to them potentially twice. First, to just thank them for the interview time, as well as a follow-up if you don't hear anything back within 1 to 2 weeks. Keep in mind, if the position does not come through, if you do not get hired, it still is an opportunity for you to learn how you did, what you could do better. Don't let it be a feeling like it's a reflection negatively on yourself. It's really just an opportunity to be grateful and to learn from that experience. And maybe the next one is the one that will be the right one for you. So turn it into a positive opportunity and don't worry about everything not lining up as you have hoped, because this is a very competitive time that we're in. Many people are applying for the same opportunity, the same position, and you really just have to keep improving on how you're doing your interviewing, how you're answering questions, how much information you can be better prepared for the next interview. Go online, spend more time researching the company, looking at the website, looking at their social. What more can you do and how you can do better for the next time? Stay positive, stay focused, just keep moving forward. So I want to now ask if there's any other questions that anyone has at this time.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. While we wait for those questions to come in, again, we just want to thank you for all this great material. It was fantastic. And as a reminder for anybody who came in a little late, we just want to say that our applications are open for BLX, and you can apply for that on our website at www.blxinternship.org.
Yeah, can you hear me, Suzanne?
Yes, I can, Sean.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure the audio is working. Yeah, I think I wanted to clarify some things for the audience. Some of the tips that Suzanne is giving is just great general advice as you prepare for interviews throughout your career, like looking at the job description and being prepared for that. With BLX, there isn't really like one job description for what you'll be doing, because it kind of depends on what the firm wants you to do. One of the things that Suzanne and her team offers is a lot of help to get you ready for your interview. So they can do things like a mock interview, kind of really help you craft your story. So when they're interviewing you for the BLX program, they're also trying to think, how can we help you craft the best story for yourself as you apply to these other firms. One thing I would, I guess there's two things. Like there's the around the like, what's your weakness? Firms aren't really expecting like you to have some like hero story of like, I used to do this, but then I learned this about myself, and now I can do this, and like to show how you conquered something. They really are looking for like an authentic weakness that's relatable, that you're working on. It really shows like self-awareness. They're not expecting you to be perfect. So for example, you could say something like, I've had a hard time maybe getting distracted when I'm doing my work. So I've learned to start turning off all my notifications on my phone and really starting to time block or something like that. And it's something I'm still working on so that I don't get, distracted with my work or something like, I don't know, something like that. And then I think one last thing, is to make sure you're prepared to ask really good questions. That really shows a lot of how much research you did about the firm, how seriously you're taking this. If they get to the end and you don't have any questions and you're like, all right, so when do I hear back? Like, that's not really a good look. You want to show that you're interested in them particularly. So look on their website, look on LinkedIn, maybe look for current events that they're involved with. If nothing else, say something like, or ask something like, what separates like a good intern candidate from a great intern, or like what separates a good team member at your firm from a great one that's like really exceeding expectations. Because so that shows like kind of like a growth mindset. So no, that was kind of, I guess it wasn't really questions. It was more just kind of some thoughts for people to think about as they're interviewing.
And that's great. Those are great points, Sean, to make. I definitely agree that, you know, we absolutely help prepare anyone who is applying an intern for a BLX internship. We absolutely do help with giving pointers during the interview process. And then if we feel that they are needing additional help, we actually offer coaching, up to 2 coaching sessions as needed to help with the confidence and sort of, as you mentioned, you know, helping with crafting your story. So thanks for sharing that as well.
We do have a few questions that came in. Chris asks, can you provide some strengths and weaknesses and showcase how someone might answer that question in an interview?
I would just say, and there's definitely a lot of, you know, there's a lot of room for what are strengths and what are weaknesses, but I would just say something like if you're very organized, if you're very punctual, if you have, you know, sort of a skill set where you really like to help to understand what the processes are, the way things are being done, and having ideas of how to make things better. Those are just, again, very high level. If you're very team oriented, you work well with others. These are all very positive things that hiring managers like to hear. Weaknesses, certainly, you know, as Sean just pointed out, you know, I can only say that if you think of things that maybe have affected your ability to, you know, let's say, remember to set an alert to remind you to do something. So maybe, you know, you missed a deadline for something that needed to be done, and you set alerts for yourself, or you document it you track it on a calendar or something like that, so it doesn't happen again. I just want you to not worry about, you know, having too many specific examples. It just needs to be sort of a quick situation that you can, you know, maybe say for yourself, oh, yes, I can point to this, and this is what I do now that helps me to not, you know, have that same, you know, problem with forgetting to submit something on time.
Suzanne, I was just going to add something in, since I was involved, not last year, but the year prior, in the coaching sessions with the Advisor Business Solutions team. And one thing I do really want to point out when it comes to the strength and weakness category is most of these firms understand, you know, you're at an intern level, so it doesn't have to be this oversell, as Sean pointed out. But one of the key things to really focus in on is communication. That's going to be a key point, you know, no matter what your experience level is. I know a lot of what I saw with the interns was having that confidence to speak up. And it's always better to say, you know, I don't know something, but let me find out, versus trying to get yourself in a sticky situation. So, for example, with one of the weaknesses that I noticed that, you know, has come up for myself when I was early on in my career was being able to deliver bad news or be able to speak up about something that didn't go according to plan, and being able to spin that weakness into a strength of how I worked through it. So ultimately, they really want to see, hey, we're all human, but how have we worked to improve upon it? So when I would share, I hate giving bad news. One way that has helped me get over that hurdle is to communicate as much in advance along the way. If I notice, something isn't going quite well, I, also try to come in with a solution when I communicate that to my boss. Hey, unfortunately, we're not going to make this deadline, but this is what I'm thinking we can do to help remedy it. Coming solution oriented and communicating is going to be key. So always keep that in mind that, even if you don't necessarily have the best answer or the full solution, showing that initiative is really going to be key, that they see, all right, this intern is building their confidence. Because that's one thing, any job, no matter what industry you're going to be in, is going to be key, is how you communicate and how you show up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to contribute to that question before we move on to the next one?
Well, let's try to get in as many as we can.
Okay, we do have them coming in. So Atia asks, let's see, what if you recommend any typical questions to anticipate from employers? What are some examples of something they can expect?
The list that we went through on the slide, which is about what are the common questions, those are the questions that you should be prepared to answer. And we are going to send you a recap of the most common questions with the follow-up for the interview. So you'll have a list of questions. How do you introduce yourself? What are some of the strengths and weaknesses? Why are you the right person for the job? Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Those are all very common interview questions that you should be prepared to answer.
And that's right. The recording will be sent out. So if you missed part of this webinar, you'll be able to review all the information Suzanne went over. Vanessa asks, what do you think about asking a company about their DEI initiatives and commitments?
I'm sorry, I saw the notice. What do we think about DEI initiatives? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so asking a company what their DEI initiatives are or what their commitment is to DEI, how appropriate, or what do you think about that?
I think if you go on the website first, just to see if they have anything mentioned about DEI, because you want to see what the company has posted, first before you come in with a question like that. Most of the time, there will be something about their company culture. That's probably where you're going to see whatever they have to say about it. And that will at least open the conversation or the question a little bit more in alignment with what they've already put out there for everyone to read. So I would say start there. Start on the website to see what the cultural and the values are that they talk about on their website. And then if there's questions that complement or, kind of dig in a little further about any kind of diversity initiatives, it will be in alignment with what they're what they've shared with you. So it shows the research piece that you've read about the culture, but you also had additional question about their diversity initiatives. So that way you're still coming in that you have researched the company and you just wanted further information.
Perfect. We have a few questions about career changers. We'll try to hit those really quick because I know we're at the top of the hour. Atia asks, having a 20+ year career and changing your career field, how does that look? Does that look unfavorable to employers as you're applying to an entry-level position?
So we've actually had career changers for each of the years that we have had the BLX program. And what I would say to you is the emphasis is on transferable skills for the appeal to why would a company consider you for an internship program. We typically see that if there's some still connection with, finance or numbers, banking, accounting, tax, any kind of something related to investing, those are going to have more likely success with using your transferable skills from a different industry. So I would say think about that first. And the second piece is how much you put emphasis in your transferable skills in your application as well as in your resume. That's what you want to put more emphasis in than maybe exactly the work that you did in another field, because that's going to completely lose a hiring manager's interest. So we have had people successfully transition to get interest with the hiring managers and get hired successfully with career changers. We clearly would match up the firms that would be more open to career changers than not. So that's always, one of the ways that we help to position you to have, potential interviews.
Perfect. One more question. Any advice you would give to those that are career changers? And I feel like you already touched on this, but anything else you'd like to add?
I think the honest way of looking at it is, what are some of the things that you could demonstrate that you know how to do already? Because the firms that are more open and receptive to career changers, they feel like they can have a little bit more of a head start because you've already worked, in a full-time office environment or a full-time work environment. So what are some of the things that you can speak to your organization, having experience working with clients or working with customers? What are some of the things maybe that you've done to help the relationship part of working with customers or clients? Those are all really big advantages when firms are looking at your background and why you're applying for the program to have an opportunity to transition into financial planning.
That takes care of all of our questions. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for your time. And thank you all for attending and registering for this webinar. If you do have any other questions, feel free to send us an email, info@blxinternship.org. We'd be happy to help you answer any questions about applications. While you're there, go ahead and take a look at any of the events that we have on our website. We do have one coming up on resume writing, which again will be hosted by Suzanne Lawrence. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Hope to see you again. And please feel free to apply. We'd love to meet you and see how we can help you to get into the financial planning industry.
Thank you.
Take care.